These are the 7 steps that you should definitely follow if you want to learn a new language. These are the steps that I use as a language learner and a language teacher. So let's get straight into the 7 steps. Step 1, the very first thing you do once you've decided the language you're going to learn is to download Duolingo or an equivalent. Now, I am really familiar with Duolingo, so I can personally recommend it and say that it's a really great way of starting. It's easy, it's quick, it's instant. You can spend like 15 minutes a day doing that for a first couple of weeks. It will keep you hooked, especially at the beginning. It's been designed to kind of work as a game. So yeah, the motivation will definitely be there, especially at the beginning. So I would spend a good couple of weeks just doing Duolingo, following through the course that they offer on there. That's going to give you a great introduction to the language. Step 2, I would say about 2 to 4 weeks in, you'll want to purchase yourself a beginner's textbook. This is to consolidate all of the things that you've learned in the app. Another thing is that Duolingo can be a little bit random in terms of structure. It doesn't necessarily teach you the essentials first. So things like numbers you might not learn for a while, although numbers are actually really essential to day-to-day language and to visiting that country and being able to order things, for example. So this is where the textbook will give you a better structure, and it will teach you those foundation things. Now, I write language learning textbooks, and if you are learning French, Spanish, Italian, or German, I have the perfect textbook for when you're at this step 2 and you just want to cover literally all of the foundation of the language. No fuss, bite-sized learning, just like Duolingo, then this is the perfect textbook. If you're learning another language, I don't currently offer any other languages, but there are textbooks out there. I would just search, on Amazon, beginner's textbook in that language, and get started, get going with that, but nothing too big and overwhelming. I think the shorter the textbook, the more concise, the better, the more likely you are actually going to be able to complete that book and learn a lot more out of it. Now, my step 3, which you can do kind of around the same time as you're getting your textbook, you could do it, from the beginning, but I would wait a little bit. So at least 2 to 3 weeks in, I would then start following language learning teachers on Instagram and on YouTube and just start doing maybe little snippet lessons. This is just going to give you that little bit more exposure to the language. Now, with these kind of, particularly with Instagram, there's not really much structure. So, you might be just learning random things, but that's fine. You don't always need structure. Sometimes it's good to just learn the odd thing here and there, just making it a mental note and keep going. YouTube, I think you can find more structured lesson courses, beginners lessons in that language. So that would be a good thing to start doing just alongside those other things. And as I'm going through the steps, it's kind of building upon each other. So I'm not saying now you should stop doing Duolingo. I'm saying continue with your Duolingo, add in your textbook, and start looking at lessons and following teachers on Instagram. And that's also going to keep that motivation up. It's going to get that showing in your feed, whatever social media you use. Step 4, I'd say after you're quite a way into the textbook, maybe at the same time as well, you want to purchase yourself a notebook that is especially for your language study. So you're starting to build upon your own personal self-study, and you're going to note down any vocab that you deem important, something that sparks an interest, and as well as any little rules that you come across. So Duolingo doesn't go into much detail about rules, so it might be that you learn something on Duolingo and then you go over and do your own little study online, and then in your notebook you can make yourself a little note. Okay, this is this. It's also great for just writing out sequences of vocab, things like that. I think a notebook is super important because that can be completely personalized to you. You choose what you put in there, and you can study from that. Next step, step 5, is to start looking deeper into the high frequency words method. High frequency words are the words that we use and repeat the most often in our day-to-day life. So they are actually the most important words that you need to actually start communicating in a language. So this is where your notebook comes in handy, because you can note all of your high frequency words here. Now you want to start fairly small, and you want to divide your words up into grammar categories. So you want to be learning 20 of each of the following. 20 high frequency verbs, 20 high frequency adjectives, 20 high frequency nouns, and that's probably enough, maybe adverbs as well. So yeah, those 4 parts of language, I would start separating them and also understanding what those things are. So if you don't know what a noun is in your own language, this is the time to get really clear on that, because it's essential you know these grammatical things in order to progress and understand the language that you're learning even better. So get clear on what they are. You can write that out in your notebook, and then for each you want to start noting those words, and you will notice how they do come up in a lot of language that you come across every day, and you'll start to see them on Duolingo and in your book. The teachers that you follow will be using them, and that's the idea. It's the words that are repeated, and they're repeated because they are the most important, so they are the ones you need to learn first. So get those down in your notebook. Step 6 is, okay, you started to get a really great foundation and you really know the basics well. You're doing a lot of Duolingo, so you're also learning a lot of random things as well that do come in handy. But this step is to actually take it to that next level. You want to start learning language in context. And still in the context of, foreign language learner, you're not quite at the level to be learning using native speaker resources. So you want to be learning through things like short stories, and there are so many short story books that you can find on Amazon, as well as things like dialogue, so natural conversations that you can read that feature everyday language. And I actually do have a conversations book that features a certain amount of conversations, and there's close language study, there's expressions. It's not just focusing on the single word, but it's also focusing on expressions. So this is that stage in your language study where you want to be picking up, what do people really say? How do sentences really sound? Okay, you want to move away from just individual words, and you really want to see the bigger picture, the context here. So not worrying about anything to do with grammar right now, just really reading and understanding what's going on. You can also use YouTube for this, so that you're also listening to the language as well. That's super handy. Step 7, and the final step for today, is now to go deeper on your grammar study. So you will inevitably have come across a lot of grammar on your way, and I do advise students to just avoid worrying about grammar rules for the first few months of your language study. But there does get a point as a linguist and a language learner where you start to become curious. So you actually do want to learn, okay, why is it like that? What's this irregular thing here? This is why I do suggest that you wait, because if you start with grammar study, you're kind of losing the purpose of actually, being able to communicate in a language, because just by learning and studying grammar in a grammar book, you're not learning communication. So I say first thing, focus on communication. It doesn't have to be accurate and mistake-free, like just go for it. Focus on being able to express simple things, and then once you're there and you know those simple things and it's feeling easy, then you can start going deeper on the grammar study. And I would, with a focus there on verbs, so particularly in the languages that I teach and that I've learnt, Spanish, French, Italian, I would focus there when I say grammar study, a strong focus on verb tenses, because it's such a big thing of the language, especially as a native English speaker. It's a lot to kind of get your head around. It's very different to English with all of the verb conjugations and things like that. But yeah, any kind of grammar book here, a beginner's grammar book, so you still want a gentle way in, that would be ideal. And I have actually written as well a verb book that is just dedicated to self-study and verb tenses. It's currently available in French, Spanish and Italian, so if you are learning one of those, this book will be perfect at this stage. So I would wait until this step 7, you've covered all the basics and things like that, and now you're ready to actually go deeper into the rules of the language. Thank you guys for watching this video. Those are my 7 steps to the self-study plan of learning a language. These are things that I would personally do if I was going to learn a new language tomorrow. And for all of the books that I've spoken about, the books that I've written, I will leave links to those below. And yes, please feel free to check out my Amazon bookstore, because I do have a lot of books. I've written a lot of books, and not just for adults but also for children. And that's another final little tip for you if you are finding textbooks a little bit overwhelming, and you just want something to get you started. A great way to start to get your foot in the door is by using a textbook designed for children. It will be a lot softer, it won't be overwhelming. So it's a really great way just to get started with the language.